So open source has fundamentally built the foundation, laid the foundation for AI, and not just for AI. We've seen this in the past for different types of technology, be it in terms of operating system or frameworks. We've seen MySQL, Kubernetes. Android is a major example.
Right.
So I think this started somewhere in the late 80s when a bunch of people, including Richard Stallman, got together and they're like, okay, the softwares should not just be with the companies anymore. It should also be given to the people to contribute or exchange and build over it.
So the same thing has been happening in LLM space also. If we say that OpenAI made LLM based chatbot famous, then we can say that open source LLMs made actual bring the democratization of AI, and that was first done by Llama. That was like Meta's Llama. And however, that Llama story is quite interesting. That Meta did not build Llama for commercial purpose or for open source. So it was leaked on 4chan with weights, and then people started using it. The Meta had to come out and say like, why? Okay, we are opening it for research purposes. And after that, we saw like various models coming up. For example, we saw that Vicuna built on Llama, and then Alpaca, and then Falcon, and all these models were really potent enough and really good that they outstrip GPT-4 on various evaluations. So I think a lot of interesting thing has been going on in open source in LLM segment as well.
So that is in terms of language models, but generative AI in general. So last year we saw that Stability AI released diffusion models, which is a type of image generation model. And a week later, we saw another version of it that was called unstable diffusion, which was basically whatever filters were not letting people create not safe for work content on stable diffusion could now be generated through unstable diffusion. So this is one of the pain points of open source, that people eventually start using it for malicious purpose. The second is there is the licensing issue, which is very tricky. So if you don't have a proper license for the data that is built, that your model is built upon, um, you can get into a lot of legal trouble, and that we saw in terms of Microsoft and OpenAI also earlier this year there was this legal case. Then because now there's the licensing issue, it's very difficult to commercialize that model. You can't go and sell it because you don't have a proper license for it.
Got it.
So like those are some of the
But
problems.
don't you think it's a, we are at a very early stage of LLM, and even like open source, and we are seeing these issues and problems everywhere, not with open source only. I mean, we see that, how closed source platforms like OpenAI, they're also struggling with a lot of stuff, and they have been called at various times to.
So that is the problem with open source coming from the big tech. And that was not just in terms of Meta. I think even other companies are quite hesitant in terms of open sourcing the models. So last week I was at the AWS reInvent, and I met with the VP of generative AI over there. So I asked him the same question, that why is AWS not one of the major contributors of open source? And what he said was, there's a lot of money, infrastructure, and human resources involved in building those models. And the problem here is it's not secure enough. We're in that stage that we don't know if this is secure enough or safe enough to be let that out, like just be released in the wild as of now.
I think the industry is quite divided, at this place, because if you see that, Hugging Face founder Clem, he gives a completely different, he has a very different thinking about this. What he tweeted about this, that, what he thinks that in future, maybe next year, in 2024, open source LLMs are the way to go, and we will see a huge rise in open source and many new products built on open source and all.
Definitely, and I think that there should be more of a reason for like researchers and developers to feel more excited from what's coming from the open source initiative like Hugging Face, rather than expecting the big tech to like just come and serve them something on the plate.
Right.